The transfer window, of course, is closed, and Arsenal's Premier League ambitions have taken their first hit, and absolutely no one is overreacting about it. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Arsenal News Show. I'm not here. This isn't real life right now. I am away. I'm currently at Gatwick Airport waiting to get on a flight to go to Naples, or Napoli, as they call it out there. And I'm very much looking forward to it as I sit here right now. But I don't want to leave you in the lurch entirely. You aren't going to have a show on Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. I'm going to take a genuine break. I enjoyed the one I had in June when I went to Canada, and it was a learning experience that I need to do that more often. So I'm doing that more often by taking this break this weekend. But it's mainly for the missus, but I'm claiming it's a channel break too. But as I say, I didn't want to leave you in the lurch. I wanted to record a special episode as we do, where we're joined by a fantastic guest. And I am joined by an excellent one today. It's Mr. Elliot from the Arsenal Vision podcast. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
I'm doing well, Tom. I'm happy and proud for you that you're taking some time away. If you'd like to stuff me in a suitcase and bring me with you, I realize you're already gone at this point, so it's too late. Maybe you have stuffed me in the suitcase. Maybe that's where I'm currently at.
We actually do have a spare suitcase. So this is obviously for the Mrs. 30th, and I'll be very honest.
For her birthday was that again?
Her 30th birthday.
Oh, you children, you sweet summer child.
I'm not the booking guy. So she's very much the organizer. And, Canada, there was booklets, there was itineraries, there was, it was all very much, it's like having someone in HR who you're married to, really, because they book everything for you. But doing it this time around, I cannot understand how she does it so successfully and in such an organized way, because doing it as a surprise, which it was, has been one of the most challenging things. And I've somehow managed to book us both suitcases when we only need one to share, but I've managed to get us both. So I do have a spare that I could potentially fit you into.
I mean, I fit into most suitcases, as you know, having met me. So you can really pick whichever one you want.
How we were just talking off air about potential trips and stuff coming up in the future. Is booking and traveling something you excel at, or is it something you'd rather someone else do?
Yeah, I like to travel, and so I've had the pleasure and good fortune and privilege to do it quite a bit in my life. And it's weird. I can be really laid back and relaxed about just about everything, but the things I'm not about, I'm extremely OCD, and booking travel is one of those things. So I don't mind poring over flight itineraries and schedules and trying different airports. And, what if I fly in Amsterdam and then connect? And what if I fly into Gatwick? And what if I fly into Heathrow? And what if I fly into Charles de Gaulle? And I'm currently actually in the midst of that kind of process over a couple of away days for the Champions League. So no, I don't mind it. I think I'm pretty decent at it, but also, as we already covered, I'm quite a bit older and had a lot more experience at it. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm hoping, of course, that we get to see this season at many points. I'm sure we will, and it's going to be hopefully a very good season. But it didn't feel like the emotions of the weekend were leading people to think it's going to be a great season. I did a show the other day where we did a phone in, and the question was very simple: is do we feel like there's been an overreaction to the defeat on the weekend? How did you initially feel about it in your own emotions, and then how did you absorb the broader reaction, and what did you make of that?
So yeah, that's a couple different questions in one. So I'll just say for myself, I was disappointed, of course. I was not outraged by it. I was disappointed. I think the best comment on the game actually came from Arne Slot, who said if you play it 10 times, it's a draw 8 times, Arsenal win once, and Liverpool win once. I think that's about right. He said neither team created the volume of chances or openings that they would expect to, and it's a testament to the quality of both teams. It was a low-incident game. And I think in low-incidence games, you can fool yourself into thinking, well, if we had just pushed for it, we could have won it so easily. But what you fail to realize is that had you pushed for it, it may have been a higher incident game on the other side as well, where you could have lost it more heavily or lost it earlier. So I think for me, I was disappointed but not outraged. I think obviously so early in the season and too early to have strong reactions. And I think I'm buoyed, as you would say, buoyed, as I would say, by the fact that
Yeah.
I don't actually, we won't get into that. I don't actually regard
I've never heard it
Liverpool.
called buoyed before.
It's what people say here. And I get it, because then people will be like, well, how do you say the word buoyancy? And I say buoyancy. Buoyancy.
Yeah.
But I digress. So I think the fact that Liverpool themselves haven't been particularly convincing. And so I don't feel too worried, he said, famous last words, yet. Now, as far as the reaction, I have to admit I'm a little fortunate, I think, because I've been working really hard not to consume too much social media. And when I do it, not to think of it as being indicative of anything other than social media.
Yeah.
Because we know these platforms are geared to get the things that are most hysterical in front of you, so you'll spend the most time on the site. I'm leaning more on my WhatsApp groups. I have so many WhatsApp chats with so many people that are Arsenal fans, and I think that gives me a truer feel. And then obviously when I'm able to get to the games, that helps too. I think the sense was similar. Disappointed, maybe a missed opportunity, not particularly outraged, and not particularly convinced by Liverpool enough yet that we feel like they'll run away with it. So I hate to be right down the middle about it, but that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, I think the two words that you mentioned of just missed opportunity, that's kind of how I look back at it. In all honesty, I was, very disappointed by, the approach or the selection and the way in which, particularly the second half, like the lack of proactiveness around the changes, But
I feel more that way about the changes than the lineup. And I forgive anybody, not forgive. I accept that there are people that in good faith think the lineup was the wrong pick. I can justify, first of all, whatever you think of Gabriel Martinelli, and he's clearly well off his best.
Yeah.
He is fundamentally, before Eze came in, our first choice left winger. We started our first choice left winger over a guy who had 3 training sessions. I don't think that's fundamentally conservative. I think the focus on Marino, I get why that feels conservative.
Yeah.
But Ethan Nwaneri, I don't think he's had a single start in midfield for Arsenal, and he's 18 years old, and this is the hardest fixture maybe in world football right now. And Marino has played at the Bernabeu, at the PSG, in the Champions League semifinals. So to your point, it's much more that the timing and the nature of the changes that frustrated me than the lineup itself.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. And I certainly don't. It's whenever I look at the lineup, I'm not criticizing, the players or like even Mikel Merino, and I get it. Like, I asked Arteta after the game, as I've brought up several times, about what did he think it was too conservative, and it was just kind of his answer was very much he felt like this is what we had. This is what we had going into this game. It was just, I think, the in-game side of it, which is different, and kind of where I want to take the conversation because let's be honest, the Liverpool game has been done to death really by this point. And that's what happens when you have an international break, because you then stew on the same result for so long and it's so frustrating. Yep. What I want to talk to you about is Arteta and his philosophy, Elliot. That's kind of what I want to get into, because I've come away from the game and I've spoken to a lot of different friends of mine who are Arsenal fans. I've obviously heard from listeners on the phone and show and in the comment section. And there's this sense that this game represents, in some ways, so many people's concerns about Arteta and his philosophy and whether or not he is capable of taking Arsenal to the next step. Do you feel like this game is a microcosm of that? Or do you get the sense that there are broader examples that show, let's just say, I don't know, a week ago when they put 5 past leads that might bring better and broader context to that nuanced argument, if you like?
It's difficult, because I think there are people who understandably and rightfully have concerns about whether we attack effectively enough and well enough to win the things we want to try to win. I think that is borne out, and I apologize for my dog.
Oh, no, you're fine. We like it. We like environmental background. Yeah. This is great.
So I think that is borne out by, and it will be done momentarily as someone has just come into the house. So I think that fundamentally that's borne out by the fact that even in our best goal-scoring seasons under Mikel, the one before last season, the one before that, from an underlying metric standpoint in terms of open play, chance creation, and XG, we've always been just below the really elite tier of Liverpool and City in those metrics. I do think, by the way, that eliminating set-piece goals and set-piece chance creation from the calculation of whether we have a good attack is unfair, because those goals count, and we've proven reliably, consistently good at converting those opportunities into goals. Okay. So there's that. In terms of our style and our approach, Tom, there's two things I want to focus on, and I'll try to do this quickly. Okay. One is, I think it depends what you define as conservatism, because it's not like we sit deep and play long.
Yeah.
We consistently have one of the highest defensive lines in Europe, one of the most aggressive presses in Europe. From a field tilt standpoint, we're first or second every season. And the reason I bring that up is that tells you we are up the pitch. We are trying to dominate the territory of the pitch where you can put the ball in the opposition net. In terms of touches in the opposition box, we're always among the top, right? So how we arrive there, do we arrive there urgently enough? Do we arrive there when defenses are unsettled? That's a fair question, but I think that is not conservatism. It may be that we don't vary our approach enough, or we're not quick enough or direct enough in our attack, that our attacking pace is too slow. But I don't think it's inherently conservative, because we're in the zones where you can hurt teams. We're just not necessarily there with the urgency. And you come down to one of two calculations. It's tactics or it's talent. I am of the opinion that it is a talent issue. That fundamentally, when you get to the final third, the extent to which you score goals is largely about talent. If you look at who scored the goals and created the goals for Liverpool, take out Salah and Trent, and there are almost no goals in Liverpool last season. Well, you can say, why would you take them out? You wouldn't, but that's their talent, right? Last season has to be thrown away to some extent because the players that could give us that capability were gone. The single biggest area where I think I have fundamentally an agreement about conservatism is simply that Mikel does not seem to want to play two creative eights. He wants to play a box crasher, an off-the-ball player, a dual winner. And that is his fundamental philosophy about how we can win the most games. And if we fall short from an attacking standpoint this season, I do wonder if that may be the issue. And now that he has Eze, I think it is incumbent upon him to at least see what happens if I drop Rice back at times and play with Eze and Odegaard together. You know, with Nani off the left, Saka off the right. It's a bit FIFA, but it may unlock some patterns and some options for us that we haven't had in the past. And as a final point, and I realize I'm verging on rant here, but I was thrown off by my dogs. I do. I think the big games have not been why we failed to win titles the last few seasons. This was the first loss in 22 games.
Yeah.
It is the other games. And the only kind of other game we've had this season is Leeds, and you rightly point out we won 5-0. So I want to see if our attack creates more open play chances, more big chances, more XG in those games. And we've got some of those games coming up at the back end of September and October. That's where I think we'll see if we have an attacking deficiency. But I don't think fundamentally it's the big games that are going to tell us much, because we've just been very good in those games overall.
When me and you have these conversations, either here or on the Vision, often we end up talking about data and XGs and field tilts and things like this. I think it's an element of the game, and I don't know what the chat box is looking like right now while this plays out.
Probably telling me to shut up, but that's okay.
It's very difficult to kind of preempt it. But I know from just doing enough live shows with chat boxes that the two words that get brought up a lot when I talk about bring up data, bring up numbers is, you may have even guessed it by now, is the eye test. That's often the response that I get. Why is it, and this is more of a personal question, I guess, why is it that you feel that data, and particularly kind of predictive metrics, like, well, I say predictive metrics, I'm talking more about data which kind of infers what we might see more so in the future, and you can look at trends and you can look at patterns and you can look at increases and decreases or whatever. But why is it for you such, as a fan, not a podcaster, but as a fan, why is it so important that you feel that stats is so such a big part of how you talk about Arsenal?
I like to blend it. Look, I watch every game, and we do rewatches of most games. So in many instances, I've watched every game twice, right? So the eye test is the first thing. I think what the data helps me do, because football is a low incident sport and we tend to remember the big incidents. But if you ask most people what happened in a game, you find that their memory very quickly betrays them, about what really happened. And I think the data just helps me gut check what my eyes are telling me. Now, the irony is, I think the data aligns, because the funny thing is the people that say they don't like data, well, here's a classic example. 2 seasons ago, we scored 91 goals. It's the most goals we've ever scored in our history.
Yeah.
If you don't like data, then that should tell you we're a brilliant attacking team. But the data tells you a little bit about what your eyes told you. A lot of that came from set pieces. A lot of that came from penalties. A lot of that didn't come from open play. Our XG wasn't top of the league. So I'm just telling you with data what my eyes also told me, which is despite all the goals we scored, at times we did look like we were too easy to hold to nil. We were too easy to suffocate and to stifle. I actually think the data has been aligned with the eye test largely, which is as good as we've been in finishing second the last 3 seasons. We have never had elite underlying attacking metrics in any of those seasons. Yeah. So I actually don't think that diverges from the eye test. I think it confirms the eye test. And so in that way, I think that's a good thing in a way, right? It's telling you that your eyes and the data are pointing you towards the same area of opportunity. But the reason I like to talk about things like, a field tilt or even just basic possession metrics or defensive line height, again, things that your eyes can see. This isn't a team that's not scoring because it's sitting back and being reactive. It's a team that's not scoring, I think, largely, and maybe this is a system thing, by the way, because we arrive at the dangerous areas of the pitch slowly and in a way where the opposition defenses have time to be settled. I think we've been a poor transition team. People say, oh, we don't counterattack. We do counterattack. We're just shit at it. And I don't know that that's a system problem. I think that's a talent problem. When Gabriel Martinelli against Liverpool runs the ball out for a goal kick, I'm not trying to pick on him, but that was a moment where we had an opportunity. That's frustrating. And that's not a system issue. Yeah, of course, that's a talent thing. Yeah. When, a few seasons ago, he had a chance, was it against Liverpool or something? It was late in the game where we were countering and he had a chance to play Saka in to acres and acres of space. And the pass was under hit and it was cut out. Those things aren't system. They're talent. So maybe I'm being a little too sympathetic to the manager in thinking that we haven't had the right number of creative players. But if you want to put it back on the manager, then I would simply say, Tom, when you play with a holding midfielder at 6, and a destroyer off the ball player at left 8, right? And you have inverted fullbacks who don't overlap on both sides. And Martin Odegaard is your only creative player, and he's really more box to box than 10. He's not a 10.
Yeah.
Then maybe it is the manager simply not putting enough players with final ball capacity on the pitch to enable the other players. I think we're going to learn a lot this season, though, because the squad is so deep. If he can't find the combination of players to create more XG, more open play chances, more eye test attacking football, then it is ultimately going to reflect back on his tactics and his selection.
Yeah. How do you ever I realize I'm kind of just asking really short, snappy questions at the moment and making you talk quite a lot, but just kind of listen to what you're saying there, and I 100% agree, and I think about what I've seen over the last 3 seasons, and I look at the data of what I've seen over the last 3 seasons, and I absolutely see the alignment between the two. And I think we're seeing, especially last season, just a needless kind of over analysis of what really happened, because the analysis, all that needs to be is 27 injuries explains what happened last season. In fact, 27 injuries and what happened last season, I think, is still astonishing that we managed to finish second and got 2 cup semi-finals.
I agree.
Yeah. But when we get, if, and it's a hypothetical, and I don't necessarily like dealing too much in them, but if Arteta has this deep squad now and he can't find a way to incorporate Gyökeres, for instance, he can't find himself using Eze in midfield like we think we need to see at some point, and that counter-attacking element doesn't improve, then we don't become more refined in the final third and more threatening and more dangerous. The short question I have for you, and it's not a nice one, but what happens?
Well, that's tricky, right? And this is the thing. I don't want to be someone who tries to placate the most frustrated and impatient people listening to a show.
Yeah.
If you are at your wit's end with Mikel, if you think he is to blame for us falling short of our ultimate goals, I can't sit here and tell you you're wrong. But I'm also not going to try to answer a question in a way that I placate that viewpoint.
Yeah.
I think we fall into binaries. It's totally natural. It's not just in football. It's not just in sport. It's in everything now. A player is the GOAT or they're shit. A team is a title winner or they're shit. And the reality is there is no world where you finish second in the Premier League and reach the semifinal of the Champions League and you're shit. No world at all. Injuries or no injuries. You're good. You're just not quite there yet to the ultimate goals you want to achieve. Because there, but for the grace of God, we could be United, right? We could be Spurs. You could be rotating through managers and finishing in the bottom half of the table. There was no guarantee when Mikel took this team over that we would ever compete again.
Yeah.
This is the most competitive we've been in 20 years. So I want to at least baseline that we are very good and we have built a phenomenal base camp to attack the title every season. For 3 seasons running, our fan base has gone into the season thinking we've got a good shot to win the title. That's all I want. Every season when it kicks off, I want to believe we can win the title. United can't. Spurs can't. Newcastle can't. Villa can't. Chelsea probably can't. City are even on the outside looking in all of a sudden. So that's good. In terms of the idea of what if we fall short again, it's always going to be the same answer, and maybe it's a little boring, Tom, and I apologize, which is,
no, please.
Well, tell me how we fell short. Did we finish 5th on 62 points? Because then I'm ready. Then I'm ready to say, you know what? We had a high watermark with this manager. It didn't get high enough, and now we're receding, and with all the talent he had, that's not good enough, and it may be time to try something different. If it's 92 points and we finish behind 93-point Liverpool, and we've scored 95 goals and made it to the Champions League final, but lost to Barcelona in the final, then no, I'm going to say, let's keep trying at this because these are hard things to win. And I've not seen us ever win the Champions League, and I haven't seen us win a title in 21 years. So no, if we fall short in a predictable way, where we simply don't create enough chances and don't score enough goals, and the bevy of attacking options that he has aren't used in a creative way to try to solve that problem, I don't know that I'll be ready to move on, but I will certainly be open to starting to think that the issue is at the managerial level.
Yeah.
And I'm simply not quite there yet. And I would just ask that anybody that has just sort of decided in their mind that Mikel is the issue, and again, fair enough if that's where you're at, I'm not sure that I can articulate the things he's supposed to have done differently. And this is the first season I think he has enough players at his disposal for us to really get a sense of whether talent or tactics are the issue behind our attacking challenges.
The reason I was kind of smirking and giggling a little bit is just because you echoed so many of the things that I was saying to the listeners this week. You know, I ended the show the other day with a near apology and kind of it was a bit of a monologue, and it was like, and if what I'm saying makes you want to stop listening to me, then fair enough. And it was something on the lines of like, there's this, and it goes beyond just football, but it's this kind of like human element of never feeling like you've got enough. And from a football fan perspective, as I've got older, and I know you were taking the mick out of being, 30. As I've got older, which is an uncomfortable sentence to say, I've realized kind of what is enough for me, as a fan. And for some people, it's like, we have to win. You have to win trophy, have to win everything, right? I respect that as a base. I think it goes beyond the realms of realism for me. But for me, when you said, and it's something that I've said, and the listeners go, is this Elliot talking or Tom talking? Because it was exactly what I said, which was, there is a very, very tiny percentage of football fans in world football that go into every season supporting a club that has the potential to win every single competition that it enters. And if my club is in that position, for me, that is enough. That is enough for me as a football fan, because I just recognize that this is a sport and that no one is entitled to win anything. Nobody is. Teams try and buy their way to these things, and it's not sport on a level playing ground like it was when me and you were on the pitches out on a Sunday afternoon. It's not like that. But as a football fan, I want to see my team win everything. And so if it is going into a season with the capacity to be able to do that, then that's enough for me. And that's when you were kind of saying along the lines of, if we were to hypothetically finish 5th and we've regressed and going backwards, and you can pinpoint the reasons behind that to the manager, then you absolutely start having a conversation about that. And the other word you use, which I'm sure got a bit of a laugh from our listeners, is that you use the word binary, which is another word that I talk about a lot on the channel. And this binary nature of, I remember doing the TalkSport event at the start of the season. Andy Goldstein was like, so if he doesn't have anything, if he has the same season he had last season, he's got to go, right? He's got to go. And I'm like, well, you want me to say that because it's great for clippable content. I get it. And that's the way social media has gone these days. But the reality is that I don't know. I don't know. If we get to the season and we've got to 2 cup semi-finals and finished second again, I'm going to find it difficult to want to sack my manager because that means we were really competitive in at least 3 competitions of the 4 that we entered. Go on.
Well, I think first of all, let's be clear. Managers get things wrong all the time. Mikel Arteta, in my mind, got things wrong against Liverpool. I think Martinelli should have come off at halftime. I think Mikel Merino was out of puff after an hour, and he should have been replaced by Odegaard if he was fit, or if not, then by Ethan. But something had to change with Mikel Merino, because then I thought when Jones came on and Merino was out of puff, they started to run through us a bit, and we were losing our hold on the game. So, there's an example of me saying I think he got things wrong. Now, there are going to be some people that say, do you think you know football better than Mikel Arteta? Of course not. But we're all here to analyze what we saw. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between the micro-analysis of, he didn't have the best game here, I didn't think his selection was good, and then the zoomed-out macro-analysis of, overall, is he guiding the club in a positive way, in a positive direction? For what it's worth, I think we do have to win everything. I think those are the right goals, because at some point, if you get close enough, you got to get over the hump, because an era will end and you will slide back down into a valley where you then have to rebuild, right? So if you don't get over the hump when you're near the apex, every year you don't get over the hump, you're getting closer to the decline again, right? There is a parabolic wave. There is a wave function around how these clubs compete, where they get better, they age out of that, they have to rebuild, and during that period they go down a bit and they come back up. And if when you come back up, you don't get over the hump, you're going to be on the decline eventually. Yeah. So you have to set a time frame. The question is simply, do you regard the manager as the reason for that decline? I mean, Jurgen Klopp had seasons where he finished second on 95 points, or whatever it was, 94 points.
Yeah.
And then finished
was there one on 98? I feel like there was one on 98.
It was 90. Yeah, I think that's right. And then, by the way, though, the very next season, thanks to injuries and rebuilding, finished 4th with 66 points. Yeah. Where would we be as a fan base? We'd be saying the guy's got to go. But then the next season, he won the title again. So, I think the problem is we have fallen into a trap of where, for some people, if you are not prepared to say that it's all the manager's fault if we don't win and he should go, then you're making excuses for the manager. And you know what? How about this? Yeah, I am. Because I think by and large, we're in a better position than 99.4% of all clubs on the planet. We do need to win. It is his responsibility to find a way to get us over the hump. But if I feel that we have a competitive, good season that falls slightly short, I would still rather try to take another swing at that than roll the dice on becoming one of the other 99.4% of the clubs that are in worse shape. And there's no convincing people that see it the other way. I totally get that. And let's see, because from a squad standpoint, he definitely has enough where we should stay competitive at the very top this season. So maybe for the people who are skeptics, the best news I can give you is I think we're going to get a pretty clean read on that this season, at least hopefully, Yeah,
and I agree with the point you raised, I think, on a previous show where you said, we hope we get a clean read on that. But unless Saka stays fit, unless Rice stays fit, unless Havertz, we get him back and he stays fit, unless we are not consistently losing 50% of the world-class players that we have at our disposal, it's near impossible to have a genuine analysis of a season in many ways. Yeah. Some people will disagree with that, and I understand that, and say, you've got enough, you've spent enough over however many years or whatever. But I don't see it that way. And it was 97 points by the Liverpool, 97. City got 98 in that campaign in 2018-19.
Shudder to think.
97 points not winning the league is that's disgusting. It's not a way to put it. It's disgusting. And that's 7 more points than the Invincibles managed. To put that into context. And Arsenal have already won more games in a season than the Invincibles managed, and still not won the league under Arteta when they had 28 in 23-24. Scored, I think it was close to 20 more goals than the Invincibles managed as well in that season too. Mm-hmm. So, look, the managerial conversation always emerges when we've had a defeat and it's a damaging defeat and one that hurts, and this one obviously hurt, and it brings up that conversation. And not only that, but it brings up the question about whether or not he's the right person to take Arsenal forwards, or can he get Arsenal to that level? Because that's not just what you're talking about. It's what all the mainstream media are talking about. It's what they want us to talk about. It's what they want us to do. But one of the questions that I always put to them is that I say, if Arsenal sacked Arteta tomorrow and he was gone, would the wider view be that Arsenal are now stronger or weaker as a result? And I don't see an argument on earth that suggests that Arsenal are suddenly stronger if Arteta went tomorrow. And that's where my head's kind of at on that front. And until that changes, until I think that the answer to that is, I think potentially if he goes, Arsenal could be stronger under somebody else, then I'm not really willing to have that conversation, quite frankly. So, yeah. But go on. I feel like you're on the edge of your seat.
Well, here's the other thing. This is where I think I'm a little out of step with the mainstream perspective on football. I think managers matter less than we think. I think they matter. And here's where I will disagree with myself. I think the bad ones matter a lot. I think if you hire Eric Ten Hag,
I literally was
right?
just thinking,
yeah. I mean, the bad ones, you can get a bad guy into a club and that guy can tank a club pretty quickly. But I think as long as you're talking about competent managers, I don't think they matter as much as we think. I still think talent wins out. I think talent decides a lot. And in fact, I think you could look at Slot last season and say, this season he's changing things. He's going more to a 4-2-3-1. I don't think it's particularly sorted out yet, by the way. If you don't like how we're playing football, go have a look at their XG, their shots. They've got some goals, but they haven't actually played well in any of their games.
No.
But setting that aside, he won with Klopp's team largely for 3/4 last season, really playing Klopp's way and just being a steady hand on the tiller. And by the way, that's fine. I'm not saying that as a way of knocking him, but I'm saying you can look at Mikel and you can say Mikel was a 91-point manager. And then he was what were we last season? 668? What did 69?
Yeah.
Did we even get to 70 points last season?
Last season we got 74 points.
Oh, look at that.
Underselling us.
There you go. I'm negative. I'm trying to build a case against the manager.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing it up is just to make the point that what were the single biggest differences between Mikel last season before? He had less talent at his disposal because Saka was out, and Odegaard was out, and Kai was out. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you replace Mikel Arteta with a really good, competent manager, let's say Luis Enrique, right? Same team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe you think Enrique's better than Mikel, or you think Mikel's better than Enrique. I think they finished within 4 points of each other. I really do, because I think good managers move the needle a bit, but I still think it's the talent that moves the needle the most. Whatever. If you think Slot's the best manager in the world, how many points does he get with Wolves this season? You know what I mean? So I don't know.
If Luis Enrique was in charge of Arsenal last season, they don't win the league.
No, of course, nobody wins the league with Arsenal last season. And by the way, here's how I can prove that. You know who the best manager in the world is? Pep Guardiola. And he finished behind Mikel last season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These managers don't overcome talent deficiencies. And I think we were talent deficient last season. We certainly are not this season. So we should have a shot. But the fixation on whether the manager should stay or go, I think sometimes hijacks a way more interesting conversation of what tweaks could he make? What areas could he adjust? What tactical changes would you like to see that you think would make us a better team? Are you willing to sacrifice some of our defensive solidity for more chance creation? And what would that look like? Because, hell, you could hire Ange Postecoglou and you could give up 100 goals and just absolutely stink, right? Then they get Thomas Frank, and you say, oh, see, Frank fixed it. He made them more solid. And they go up against Bournemouth and they have 5 shots at home and get destroyed. So this shit isn't easy. And I think the more interesting question is not whether Mikel is good or bad, because he's clearly good. The more interesting question is, what are the subtle tweaks? What are the little changes? What are the dynamics that could be updated that might get us over the hump and correct what we regard as the flaws? And that, to me, is where you can have a really interesting conversation without making it about Mikel out, he's shit, or he's the best and it's the player's fault. What are the little tweaks? That's where the gold is, figuring that out,
Well, I guess the next question for that is the little tweaks that I think we've already discussed some of them. It's about, the within our control. It's about proactivity during games with changes that can be made. It's about the selection in certain aspects of utilizing maybe more attacking players together in midfield and not just sitting on this kind of 4-3-3 with a three is a Zubi, a Rice, and an Erdegaard type in each of those three different roles. I think it's going to be about the utilization of Gyökeres as well, and how we get the best out of him as a centre forward, and how we adapt as a team to change in a way in which he is emphasized to a point where he can play his best game and he doesn't have to worry about completely changing everything about him just to suit Arsenal. So I guess if we look at that, and I'm sure you can list more, but do you have what is the evidence? I guess is the question. What is the evidence that Arteta has done that already in other areas, and that you have the belief he'll do that going forward?
Yeah, well, I think one, for example, is using Calafiori. I mean, you could say we don't use overlapping fullbacks too much. I mean, Timber overlaps at times, but he's taken his left-sided fullback and said, just go rampage up the pitch and have a free roll, basically.
Yeah.
I think that is a more attacking-oriented switch designed to make us harder to understand and to track, and more difficult for the opposition to know what we're going to do. I think Phil made this point on our pod, Phil Costa, and I thought it was a good point, is because Mikel has been somewhat rigid in the way we play and the system that we use, it is easier to prepare to play against us. Now, it's easier said than done because we're so good in the press and we're so good out of possession, we're so organized. But it is still easier to prepare a game plan to try to nullify or counter us. Calafiori is a great example of something that's just hard to counter, because who the hell knows what he's going to do or where he's going to pop up. Yeah. So that's one thing. I think what's a little unfair, right, is I think we were headed towards a situation, even before we signed Eze, where it was going to be Odegaard, Rice, Saka, Nani, and Gyökeres. And that's a very new-looking attack. Well, Saka goes out. Nani has to start on the right, which means, does he start a brand new signing off the left? No, he goes with Martinelli, and Odegaard's not even available, so he goes with Marino. And suddenly it's like, here we go, Martinelli again, and Marino. But it's like, it was enforced on him. And you could just as easily have played Ethan at left 8 and Eze at left wing and lost and said, he picked a guy who would no starts for us ever at Anfield and an 18-year-old winger in midfield at Anfield, and look what happened. Like, it's easy to reverse engineer the criticism. So I think the Calafiori thing is a tweak. I think Gyökeres as more of an off-the-ball, run-in-behind striker who can make our transitions more effective is a tweak. I think the decision to go for Eze, from everything I understood, Eze was only considered when we thought we might lose Ethan. The fact that we decided to go that extra distance and get that extra attacker, that extra player who can, I think, add just more creativity and ingenuity with the final ball, I think is a sign of a tweak. But
yeah, unfortunately,
we're not really going to know until, Saka's back and Odegaard's back, because otherwise we're just back in that world of enforced changes. And instead of seeing the plan, we're going to be seeing him reacting,
Yeah, I do know. Yeah, and I think you're spot on. I think it's so little time we've had, and obviously we've got still so much to come from Eze. I can't wait to see. Pierre Hincapié is a player who I'm really excited to see what he does in this team, and also what on earth Arteta's going to do, because he's got Calafiori playing so well, and you've just brought in. Gabriel's going nowhere. Calafiori can't be dropped, and you've just brought in a great left-sided defender who's arguably more traditional when he plays left back as well. He loves to rampage up the touchline and get the ball into the box as well, which is a little bit different to what we've got. And I think that variation was going to help us. I think Calafiori's got other roles to play in this team. I think also you've got to think about the fact that we had injuries last season that were beyond all imagination, but also we didn't help ourselves by how much we played certain players too much. And I think that needs to come into it. And that's why we've got a big squad now, so we can address that problem. But the biggest problem at the moment is a player that I think that, we've already alluded to, and you probably know who I'm already going to mention. And I think we've brought in players this summer that mean that his minutes will diminish. Gabriel Martinelli looks a shell of the player that he was before. Why has that happened? And is it personal to him, or is there an argument that the system or the rigidity or the overcoaching element that gets brought up quite a lot has more to do with his decline?
Yeah, I think Gabriel Martinelli is a great litmus test for whether you have a desire to see the manager is responsible for everything. Look, you can have concerns about Mikel Arteta's system. We talked about the eights. I think we do not play inside the block enough. That is for sure. And that I think that is in part because of the eights. I think it's in part because of midfield issues. So there's a lot of things I'd get into. But Gabriel Martinelli is playing worse. And it's not the system making him worse. He is playing worse because when he runs the ball out for touch on for a goal kick on counterattack, that's not the system.
Yeah.
There was another moment, I want to say it was against United, where he got isolated on the left-hand side. He was able to get in, and he's 1v1. And again, he tamely tapped the ball back to the goalkeeper when he had other players on, or he could have cut inside and hit a better shot. He's not playing well. He's not playing well. Over the last 3 seasons, his dribbles have declined. His dribble success has cratered. His XG has declined. His XA has cratered. His goals and assists are down. But if you don't like the data, just look at the eye test. Ultimately, he is a player that when he has a chance to attack the defender in front of him, has either become too predictable or too easy to stop. Yeah. And I'm sorry, like when you're 1v1 with a fullback, that moment is about you. It's not about the system. It's about you. And Eze came on and in 20 minutes had 3 better moments than Martinelli, has had yet this season. And this is what's hard, right? Because again, I don't want to stick the boot in. I think Martinelli is a fine player, but I think his ability to influence games in the final third has really declined. He still obviously works very hard off the ball and presses and recovers back, and those things are important. But you need players that can influence the game in the final third, and he's lost that. Nothing is more indicative of his decline than his dribble success rate, which has gone from sort of 98th percentile, way up there, 45%, to now around 30% or less. This season, he hasn't completed a single dribble.
Yeah, I can give you the exact stats because I wrote a whole article on him today. A few of the stats have gone down. If we kind of talk about when he first joined, he became harder to tackle as a player. He went from being tackled 71% of the time in take-ons in 2019-20, and then season after season down to 48%, 43%, 41.4% in terms of how often he was being tackled. Then 23-24, that went up to 53.5%, and last season it went up again to 55%. And then if you look at the stat that you were talking about regarding, what was it, the
dribble success,
the dribbles,
shots, XG,
the shots, XG, all of that, it just it goes down so much. Shot creating actions went from 1.09 to 3.2 to 3.49 to 4.1, and then went down to, it maintained in 23-4, and then it dropped last season to 2.91.
Well, can I say something too? Because the thing that I always heard was like, well, we have the horseshoe of death, and he's better sprinting away, better in transition. We need to get him into space. But we've seen some very big transition opportunities already this season where he has not been able to make the critical contribution. And like, I think there's something else to just be pointed out here. This is a guy who came relatively unheralded from Brazil, from a situation where I don't think he wasn't one of those elite talents that was spoken about like an Estevao or, an Endrick or one of those. He comes in, he has a 15-goal season at 20 when he massively outperformed his XG, but was very dynamic and exciting. And what's interesting is his XG numbers per 90, 0.3, 0.29, 0.3, they've stayed fairly consistent. He's just not outperforming that number anymore. And suddenly I think you're seeing what he is actually, which is an 8-goal, 4 assists, 7-goal, 5 assists, 9-goal, 3 assists kind of player, which is a cromulent Premier League player, but I think is an area where we can improve. And so if you want to see it as managerial, you can, but I can point you to transition opportunities where it hasn't worked, 1v1 opportunities where it hasn't worked. And for me, it is a low ebb when you have Szoboszlai standing in front of you as a fullback. There's no Bukayo Saka. You've been trusted with the start. It's a big moment for you, and you're running the ball out for goal kicks. I just think, unfortunately, it was a bad moment. And I have to admit, I've had a lot of patience with him because he's a player I loved. Yeah. But there was a moment there on Sunday where it was like the third time where he hadn't quite controlled the ball and had gone out for a throw-in, and he's given the thumbs up to the guy who passed it to him. Like, a nice ball. And I'm like, stop giving the thumbs up and just start getting it right. I was starting to finally feel some frustration there,
Yeah, no, I was the same. When he ran that ball out, when Gyökeres was making such a good run ahead of him, and I just turned to Simon Collins next to me, and I was like, that right there is the moment where people who have been fans of him and have defended him can no longer defend that situation. And I was one of the people that said, Martinelli's got a great record at Anfield. He's in my selection because I think he'll be good on the transition. And I will look back at that, and all I thought was, thank goodness we signed Eze, because he's going to change a lot, I think, for us. We've needed a long time a Bukayo Saka on our left, and there's real potential that he could be that good for us on the left-hand side, and I'm excited about that. But yeah, some of the other numbers you're bringing up, the non-penalty XG, in 22-23, he outperformed his non-penalty XG by 5.9. He was a 9.1 and scored 15 goals. And the season after that, his league tally dropped to 6, and he had a non-penalty XG of 6.8. And last season, he scored 8 Premier League goals, which was a slight outperformance of the 7.4, but still significantly lower than what was previously there. So, that, and the argument about Arteta for me, that's where it goes out the window, because he's improved and risen as a player under this coach for several years. And then recently we've seen this drop off. So it's not like Arteta's arrived and it's gone down. I think there's another element as well that isn't necessarily as talked about, but you can pinpoint a moment where his decline begins. And it's actually the arrival of Leandro Trossard as well that has an impact, I think, on Martinelli's competitivity and his competitiveness. And, having that competition that was far greater than, he ousted Emile Smith-Rowe from that left-hand side, and Smith-Rowe never got a chance again, really. Injuries, of course, played a part in that too. But Trossard arrived, and obviously initially was playing kind of through the middle because Jesus was out injured with the knee injury, and he gradually came back. And then started to work his way more so into the manager's thinking, was coming off the bench and scoring and assisting regularly, making it impossible for him not to get starting chances. He kept delivering. In 23-4, he scored, I think, 17 goals in that season. So, you're looking at that situation and you're just thinking, Martinelli has to step up when you've got somebody that's delivering as consistently as Trossard was, and he didn't. And it's never really changed, and it's only gone in one direction. And sometimes you've got to make bad decisions. You got to make tough decisions. And I thought that probably should have happened this summer. And I'm not saying that the club didn't make the decision. I don't think necessarily they were given the opportunity to, because I don't think they got the offer that they would have liked. But it's a situation that next summer, if an offer of around 40 million comes in, I think you've got to bite your arm off for 40 million. I think at this point.
Well, especially on 180,000 a week. I mean, that is really the deciding factor, right? Because outside of the Premier League, there might be 6 clubs that pay that wage to anybody, like their star players, maybe. The other thing that I want to say, I think the reason I've started to change on this player as well is when he broke in, he was this stunningly talented, exciting kid.
Yeah.
With, I thought incredible potential. But we should know this about football by now. At 24 as a winger, you are into what's considered prime. So he's just not a kid anymore. And I think on 180 grand a week at 24 years old, system or no system, if this is the best you can produce, is probably not good enough to be a starter at a title winner. And I just don't think you can have aspirations to win a title, want the manager to win everything, but then caveat the underperformance of players as being the manager's fault. This is a player who is talented and is good, but on 180 grand a week at 24 years old, he's not at the level you need him to be at. And I don't think that's harsh. I don't think that's an overstatement. It doesn't mean he should be relegated to the junkyard and never used. I think he can still have a big season for us. But again, you want to see a measure of whether the manager has the ambition to go win everything. Choosing some different options off the left is going to be a part of that. And by the way, if he picks Eze a bunch, and Eze has the same problem, and he's running it out for goal kicks, and he's getting shut down by middling fullbacks 1v1, we can go back and have another conversation. But I think we've already seen in a 20-minute cameo that that's probably not going to be what happens. The pass he slid to Odegaard, where Odegaard tried to play in Gyökeres, and maybe Odegaard could have shot.
He was kind of on his heels, Gyökeres, for that one. Yeah,
that's a ball we just don't play. We just haven't played that. I mean, and that's the thing. You say zone 14 is that zone right at the top of the box, right where the D is. That's where the best attacking teams tend to have a ball that goes into zone 14 before going out wide or going into the box. And we traditionally have not thrived at getting it in there. I think part of the reason is players just not having a feel for making that pass. And I think it's going to be a big difference having a player like Eze who has that in his locker, That's going to be an interesting nuance to the argument about overcoaching and whether these players are coached out of these moments, because we've seen it immediately what Eze's doing. And if that disappears from his game, then obviously there's a conversation to have. But if it persists and it continues and he continues to operate in that way, then you'll have your answer. And I have, by the way, been vocal that I think You want me to be fair in a criticism here of Mikel. I think Mikel has coached out some of our inside the block play because he does not want us losing possession in central spaces. Because when you lose the ball in central spaces in attack with our shape, where our rest defense is and how pushed up we are, that's when I think you can be really, really vulnerable to those quick counters. And so that as a pass, as much as I loved it, you're right. Mikel might say, those aren't passes we want to play because if that gets cut out, we're vulnerable. We're going to find out because if we don't see that pass from him again, I think you're right, Tom. I think that'll tell us a little something about instruction,
Elliot, thank you so much for your time today. Yeah. Genuinely, really appreciate it, as always. Tell people...
I ranted and raved mostly. But it is what it is.
No, it's conducive to a positive relationship that we clearly have and can be honest and open with each other about our thoughts around the club. Tell people where they can find you, what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, Arsenal Vision Podcast. We do have a YouTube channel. It's not our biggest area, obviously. We're used to having you over on like Apple or Spotify or whatever your podcast listening devices are, but we're also happy to have you on YouTube, and we put the video out, and we are working on trying to make the video more YouTube friendly with some graphics and things like that. So we hope you'll join us there. We do a Patreon pod almost every single day. So as you're listening to this, Clive Palmer will be on with me doing our Friday Night Clive, which is our live Friday show for patrons. We have instant reactions at full time of every single game. So you have something right as the game final whistle hits. We do rewatches of games where we put the game on the screen and we watch it and we break down, moments and analyze that. We do scouting videos where we use a professional scouting platform called Y-Scout and look at the video of the players and scout them. So we try to do a little something for everyone. History pods, Arsenal women coverage. We just want to be a place where if people want extra Arsenal coverage from people smarter and less annoying than me, we make that available with a dash of me as well.
There you go. I was on with your fine self, of course, the other day on one of your Patreon pods where I told everybody my deepest, darkest, most horrible secret about Ethan Winery.
And people took it mostly in.
I haven't seen the comments yet. Were they?
Yeah, everybody was great. Everybody was great. I mean, there were, I would say less than 80% of the people called you a 4-letter word. So,
okay. That's good. That's good.
20% are still with you.
I'm trying. Legend. No, that's 6. Damn it. Thank you, people, for listening. Really appreciate it. I hope you appreciate, of course, this little extra bit of content while I'm away. As I said before, no show on Saturday, no show Sunday, no show Monday. Taking a break. I recommend you do too. International breaks are called that for a reason, I think. If you can absorb as much content as you like over a short period of time, but give yourself a break, mentally. It's a really good for the soul, for the thing to do, especially when you've got a whole 35 more league games to come. Use these breaks. I know they can be annoying and you just got used to football again and it goes, but it's a good opportunity, I think, because international footballs, we all know, when it's not a World Cup or not a Euros or whatever, it's pretty dull. So use these moments, refresh yourselves, recharge your batteries, and that's what I'm going to do and bring you back an energized show, of course, on Tuesday. Thank you again to Elliot for joining us. Really appreciate your time, mate. Go and check out the Arsenal Vision podcast. You can follow or block, of course, Elliot on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. And you can follow me on Instagram now at Tom Canton Media as well. You can find me on the other platforms too, but we're trying to build up the Insta. So let's see. You'll like this, Elliot, because you're friends with Laura as well. But I got the train back from Anfield on the Monday on deadline day. I was walking down the train, went to get a cup of tea because I'm English and that's what we do. And I was walking back through the train carriage and I just feel someone smack the edge of my shoulder, just looked down and Laura's sitting there, and we just had like a whole hour conversation about Instagram influencers, and it was because she's gone very much down the route.
Her stuff is great though, man. It's so funny. I love it. Good. Yeah, I really like it. I mean, she has a talent. The other thing she has is she does the production quality really well. Like that's the stuff I can't do. We post on Instagram at Arsenal Vision Podcast, and like we have a guy who does reels, and I'm glad we have that because if you ask me to cut up videos, forget it. I'd be lost. So yeah,
there's something I'm going to gradually have to try and learn a little bit, or ask someone else to do it, but which might happen. But we'll see. I'm a bit of a control freak, so I struggle with that. But we'll see. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.